So a friend of mine once said a long time ago, there are 3 types of people in the world: followers, leaders, and loners, right?
Mm.
And I don't know if that's true, but I just thought it was cool how he said it, right? And he said, loners can become leaders just by the virtue of not following and I think I believe in the power of the individual,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
So because what the world keeps showing me is that when it's tough, man, because like, yeah, I believe in the power of the people,
Mm.
right? But I believe that mobs can be led easier than individuals can be led.
This is the Conscious Economics Podcast, and I'm your host, Rhiannon Rosalind. This is the place where we explore people, planet, profit, and art through the lens of the new economy. If you're interested in changing yourself, getting more creative, or changing the system at large, then this is the podcast for you. Tune in every other week as we explore these topics with amazing guests. We'll go deep, we'll go heart-centered and soul-felt as we go into how we change ourselves and change the world. Hello, Conscious Economics family. It's me, Rhiannon, here. I probably sound a little different because I am definitely getting over some kind of a cold. But I am so excited, as always, for this incredible episode. In this episode, I got the honor to sit down with I. I is a Canadian singer-songwriter. He's been a 2-time Juno Award nominee for Contemporary Roots Album of the Year, receiving nods at the Juno Awards of 2019 for his album Our Time and at the Juno Awards of 2022 for his album Prospect. I am in love with I. He is so incredible. We had him out about half a year ago at one of our activations in Toronto. So he was our opening artist, someone we've been wanting to book for a long time. And what an incredible person, what an incredible musician. The vibration of the music is just so high. So I just had such a conversation with him. It went on a lot longer than our normal podcast episodes because we just really got into it. And so I am so excited for you to learn more about him and to hear his incredible story and perspectives. So without any further ado, I hope you enjoyed this episode with I. First of all, thank you so much for doing this and for coming on to the show.
It's been a long time.
It has. And so the last time that I saw you, you performed at one of our events and then you were off to Europe for your European tour. So how did that go?
Europe was phenomenal. We were all over Europe, to Germany, Belgium, France, Austria, Luxembourg. It was a long experience, but it was beautiful. I was in the Alps of like Austria and stuff. It was a cool tour because Milo, like sometimes you tour with people, your support act, and they don't care about you. They don't include you. You're just there to fill in a time slot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But every event that Milo did, extracurricular, extra tour events, he invited me to almost everything. Like we went to the Belgium Zoo and they gave us like backdoor access to see all the everything and whatnot. Like that doesn't always happen. Like some artists will go on tour and the headliner just does their thing and that's what it is. And you just take what you get, right? And he was just like, no, I want you to be a part of everything. You know what I mean?
That's lovely.
We were driving across like Austria, these AMG vehicles, and just it was. I mean, I don't really completely care about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the experience was valuable. You know what I mean? Like these were like fast vehicles, like super engines and stuff, right?
Wow. It sounds beautiful. And it also sounds like you're developing a beautiful brotherhood, like a beautiful friendship.
Oh, yeah. Me and Milo, he was very supportive. And he came and he toured with me when I was in the US. But his tour was like way bigger than mine because he's like a European superstar. You know what I mean? He hasn't crossed over in the States. Mm-hmm. But it just shows you that like there are worlds outside of our world that, you could have a valid career in, right?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, while we're already on the topic. Let's talk about touring for a minute, because one of the things that we really talk about at Conscious Economics, we do so much work with artists and creatives, and I don't think people outside of the business understand just how difficult touring really is.
Oh wow,
The
yeah.
physical toll, the mental toll, the spiritual toll that it can take, and really what it takes to stay on your game when you're on the road as a working
Right.
musician. And I wonder
Right.
how you deal with that, because you always seem to have yourself very aligned and together, like your energy is always in order. So I wonder how you do, and what some of your tips and tools are for really keeping grounded on the road.
I mean, what it seems and what it is not always in alignment with each other. We all have moments of whatever it is, what I mean, going through emotions. But I think two sides of it. Like my life journey kind of has helped me prepared for stuff like this because I did a lot of backpacking, right? And
Mm.
there's almost nothing harder than backpacking. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In terms, it's because it's your physical body, feet
Yep.
walking. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're in
Yes.
vehicles or hitchhiking rides, or but technically you're walking, and then you're against the elements with your bare body, right?
Yeah.
So I describe it like when you're on a tour bus, it's almost like you're at sea. Like you're in these
Mm.
little bunks and you're driving throughout the night, and depending on what bunk you get, the tour bus is wobbling back and forth.
Mm.
And you could feel sometimes the bump in the road. You could feel the medians. It's never really a smooth ride. But you're on a tour bus, so it's better than a hotel. Actually, no, it's not better than a hotel. It's better in the sense that you wake up at the venue.
Yeah. You're doing two things at once.
Right, exactly. Which probably could be a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if we're meant to be in motion when we're sleeping, right?
It's a good question. I wonder what the research says. I don't know.
Yeah. So for me, I always have a emotional moment on tour where I'm like, I want to go
Mm.
home,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I will say, people don't talk about this stuff, but I've seen and have experienced anxiety attacks. I've seen worse than the
Mm-hmm.
ones like my anxiety attacks are just like I can't sleep. It's just
Mm.
bus gonna crash, right? But then I've heard people like waking up out of their bunks screaming, like I won't say any
Yeah.
names, but like it whether it's from a dream, whether it's just from feeling claustrophobic, I've heard it multiple times, right?
Mm.
And then there's people on tour. I don't do this, but there's people on tour. It's just a pleasure fest. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're out there just exploit your fan base and exploit the vulnerability of people who want to give you what you want. You know what I mean? Because they think you're their idol, right? I don't partake in that, but I
Mm-hmm.
would be lying if I said I haven't experienced people wanting to give me what they think I want, right? And that's a side of it that I guess people don't talk about. Married men or whatever your situation is that like avoiding that stuff, avoiding temptation, avoiding, just, and it's not even temptation. Sometimes just people just taking a picture and thinking they can just kiss you on the cheek or like kiss you on the neck. And you're like, oh, relax. Like,
Well, you're a rock star at that point, and
right,
there's a certain energetic exchange that you give an
right,
audience, and sometimes people can confuse that energetic exchange. Yeah, it's very easy. Like, I appreciate all the honesty here. Like, this is beautiful, and this is exactly what we need to hear, because I think that a lot of the times when artists are just going out on the road for the first time, that was the
right.
dream, right? It's like living the life of the rock star, and you forget, like, it's your job though too. And there has to be some kind of structure that you build around your days. And not every show is a party, because if you do that, you're going to burn out. And those are the
Oh,
ones that don't have longevity in their career.
and you could burn out even if you're not partying, right?
Exactly.
Like touring is bittersweet. Like it's like people don't understand what that means. How could it be bittersweet? You're on stage because the things I hate about touring, and I don't want to just get into the hate because I'm going to get to the things I love.
Sure.
But there's
Yeah.
a whole bunch of things that you're like, it's not hate. Hate is a strong word. The inconveniences is like the idea of packing a suitcase and then living out of that suitcase for a period of time. That gives me anxiety. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like whenever I have to do that, I just feel like like you know what I mean? Thinking about laundry. Just like
Yeah.
when is the
Yeah.
next laundry? And then you're all sharing the same venues, washing machine and dryer. So we're all fighting to get our laundry done at a time
Yeah.
that conveniences all of us. Then there's a side of it where you're traveling for so many hours, whether you're on a tour bus or whether you're the one driving, because I've done it all. I've been on a tour
Yeah.
bus, I've been the one driving, I've been driven around,
Yeah.
right? How long are you on stage for? Sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, sometimes hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, right? If your audience can stomach 2 hours of you.
Mm.
And then it's done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then you bask in this moment for another couple hours after the show. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's done. And then
Mm.
the majority of it is related to traveling. right?
Mm-hmm.
Related to getting to the next venue. And then when you're an independent artist like myself, let's say a tour where I'm not the headliner, even if I am the headliner, let's say a tour that I'm headlining, it's a smaller tour, so there's no tour bus. I got to drive a band around because I don't have a driver, and then I got to set up my own merch. I got to count out my own merch. I got to do the
Mm-hmm.
math on all that. So then sometimes you have to drive for a couple hours after the show just so the next day's drive isn't as long. So these are things that in the moment they can stress you out. They can stress out everybody. Then we won't even go into the whole crossing the border, right? And the immediate scrutiny you get from being a black musician with a beard with an interesting last name. Some people are really great with me, and I had some pretty crazy experiences, right? Like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be too long to explain, right? And then you're young people. You're relatively young, so do you have drugs in the car? Which is never the case, right? We don't. Most people I bring in my band don't even smoke, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that goes behind it. And I think my demeanor is relatively calm most of the times,
Yeah.
relatively non confrontational. And I think throwing my body into Ethiopia, throwing my body across Ontario, and throwing my body into the Caribbean and backpacking keeps me calm and alert in those circumstances. I think my backpacking experience has heightened my intuition higher than most people. I would, and I don't want to sound cocky or like arrogant or
No,
anything,
you
but
don't.
I wouldn't be surprised if I'm like in 1 percentile of intuition. Like the things that I see and my awareness of
Yeah.
things is so high,
Yeah.
right? And I credit it to those trips. You know what I mean?
Mm. Well, so there's so much to unpack with everything that you have just said. So I've been watching your career and like a fan, but we got to actually have you perform at
Right.
one of our events, and that was like a big deal for us. We were like, "Oh man, like do you think you'd say yes?" And we were really excited. And obviously, I love listening to you on your records. But then when I was actually in your presence at the event, and, I'm pretty tapped into this stuff as well, the vibration of you and your music. So I'm not even talking right now about genre specific, none of that. Like, we'll get into that, but I'm talking more about the actual vibration of what you bring, and that your music is literally uplifting. So it brings people from, let's say we were at a 3, we're leaving at a 7, like we're
Right.
actually coming up, we're going up the notches in the scales vibrationally in our body, which means we're having heart opening experiences listening to you, we're having crown chakra opening experiences listening to you. And so when you say this and you say like you're so in tune with your intuition, I believe you, because I can tell that you're at the vibration where you are able to feel and see all the extra perception that is available to all of us,
Right.
but we have to cultivate it. And so that's my next question for you. Like, what are you doing over there to cultivate that? Would you say that this backpacking was a spiritual, like,
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Like
So so tell us a bit about that. Yeah.
this may be not the greatest answer, but I think it boils down to honesty, right? Like to be able to see anything for what it is, you have to be honest. You know what I mean? Like if you're not honest, you can't see things for what it is. So when you completely strip yourself to the highest level, and I'm not saying with the highest level of anything, but like a vulnerability that you can experience and of honesty that you can experience to where you're even contemplating like the meaning of life and the what you're here for, and you go to those places that feel dark, right? That
Mm-hmm.
feel really dark. That to me is where I feel like my intuition lies a little bit, right? Like I'm a strong believer in God. I'm a Christian, and it's
Yeah.
not, I don't hesitate to say it like that. But I know when you say Christian to the world, there's so many types of Christians. So what does that mean, right?
Sure.
So I
Yeah.
don't I don't like to go out and be like I'm a Christian because it's just my heart is
Mm-hmm.
Christian. You know what I mean? My clothes are not Christian.
Yeah.
My beard is not Christian. Like that.
You're a believer.
Right. And I just think it boils down to honesty. And I think honesty reveals truth. And it's
Mm.
not always the truth of the matter because sometimes there's a deeper point to something. So someone may be, for example, like someone may come into your office every day and they're just angry, right? For most people, the truth of that situation is that person's angry. The person who sheds their vulnerability may see something more to that situation. So
Yeah.
whenever I talk to someone that is considered a racist or considered a supporter of an ideology that I don't personally agree with or that the majority of people don't agree with, I never just
Mm.
say that person's a racist or that person is a bigot or whatever that person is a chauvinist or sex, whatever it is. I try to ask myself, why? Where does it come from? Now, there's a degree at which I'll stop asking why because it just there's a point where it doesn't matter anymore. Because
Sure, of course, because it's not safe.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. But at first conversation, I like to hear people out. I like to hear why they
Mm,
think what they think, and I like to hear it without challenging them because it's like they're probably always challenged,
right.
right? You know how many times in my life I've heard like you're not like them. You know
Oh
what I mean?
man.
Like, and
Yeah,
and it's a horrible thing to say to someone, but
it is.
I
But
don't take it as an insult. I take it as like a crack in the foundation.
I would take it as a recognition of your ability to connect.
Right, right,
And that is exactly what the experience is in being in your audience, is that you've done your work and you're on the path, and we all are, and the work's never done. Like,
right,
and this audience knows what we mean by the work, that we're facing our shadows, that we're looking at the things that are internally maybe driving us to impulsively make decisions that aren't for the best of ourselves, our family, our communities. And so when we do that internal work, we start to be able to take away everything that we're not to become to the truth of what we are, which is an expression of the divine. It really
mm,
is. Like, it flows through us. It's this physical reality manifest through the divine creative force. And you don't have to be a Christian or like that's not even, separate to any religion or any philosophy in the world. Like, if we just actually get curious, which is what you're saying, it's the
right,
teaching of what you just said, to be genuinely curious and to look at someone beyond labels and perceptions and anything and just hear them and want to understand genuinely. And when we do that, there is a field that opens around us and it
right.
feels different.
Yeah, and I always say this is something I've been saying for years. There is no objectivity without compassion, right? You cannot see someone or hear someone out without compassion, and I think that's the biggest thing the world is missing is compassion. Like we're just our guards are up. We all want to fight. We all want to be right. But on the positive side of things, I'm not like, I used to fast a lot and when I would do backpacking stuff, I fasted, but none of that to me is like the answer. Like to me it's just like clear your eyes out and just see things as they are. See yourself first as they are. Because if you don't see
Mm,
yourself as you are, then you can't see anything else. And that means like you are something. You come from nature, you come from nurture. So there are things that make you something. So it's not
mm,
like you are a blank slate and you can transform yourself.
yeah.
But in order to do that, you have to look at yourself honestly. So like I am a product of my mother. I'm a product of my father. I'm a product of my culture. I'm a product of my ancestors. I'm a product of all the things around me, the technology around me. So all these things that you got to look at yourself and say, throughout the years, it shaped something,
Mm,
but there's something in me that's yearning for something, looking for something, trying to be something. And I try to distill that as much as possible. And I do believe in purpose. I feel like that in this life, you could find a purpose.
yeah.
Purpose doesn't necessarily have a scale or a magnitude to it. So meaning your purpose can be very small. And that's all
Mhm.
you could, and that's if you feel that's your purpose, it's going to feel gigantic because that's your
Yeah.
life, right? I
Yeah.
think we often align purpose with how many people are aware of our purpose. You know what I mean? Or how many
Yeah.
eyes and how many cameras and how many followers and likes and clicks and things could connect to our purpose. It has nothing to do with that, right?
Yeah.
Purpose is between you and God. And then when that contract is made, then you fulfill your purpose with the people in your circumference around you, right? And that's how I look at it. So my honesty led me to my purpose, and my purpose led me to just my connection with people. And I just feel like I make uplifting music because I've needed uplifting music. I've dealt with
Mm.
depression. I've dealt with severe anxiety throughout my whole life. And my anxiety is attached to like a sense of existentialism. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell are we doing here? What does
Yeah.
it all mean? No matter how I look at it, I think deep down inside, like we all have that a little bit. Now, to varying, like my wife is so different than me in that regards. Like, she is a life person. Like, she enjoys life, and I enjoy life. Don't get me wrong, but like I contemplate life more than she does. You know what I mean? I contemplate things that she would not even think about, right? And that's not an insult. That's like to me, it's like I wish I could just turn that off sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And just appreciate the moment, because every moment is just like I'm looking at everything, looking at all the angles, looking at all the issues.
Yeah, you're searching for truth in every present moment,
Yeah,
and
it's
you're a seeker. And it comes through the music, it comes through in the way that you've, cultivated your career, even starting with the backpacking and the travel. Like when someone feels called to go out onto the open road,
mm,
like to walk the mountain path alone with a bag on their back and just their body, like it's because there's a sacred calling to understand truth and to search for truth, and to be willing to be wrong at what you thought truth was, or to realize that you search and search and search and there's still no answer.
right,
And
right,
that's
right,
like more, that's the great mystery, right? So other ways that we can reference God for people that have challenges around religious ideologies because of stuff that's happened and
right.
been used, like religion has been used as a tool, a political tool and a power tool. So sometimes I pull it out into other language, like thinking about the great mystery, and like just great mystery. Sometimes in my meditation, I ask great mystery instead of God. Or, sometimes I'm thinking about another enlightened being like a Jesus or a Buddha who, were enlightened beings on this planet who were there to show us who we are, what we're capable of. And so I think one question I have for you, and maybe this is just because I'm seeing parts of myself in what you're saying, so I don't want to be projecting, but this life on the road and then coming back, do you ever feel like restless in all places? Like when you're back, you're like thinking about the road, and then when you're on the road, you're thinking about being back?
Oh yeah, yes, yes, yes. So because what home life can never replicate is getting on stage to thousands of people. Like, I played Red Rocks. I don't know if you're familiar with that venue.
Yes.
There was like 10,000 people in the audience, and you're singing in between mountains,
In the
literally, right?
nature. Yeah.
Being at home can't replicate that, and that feels good. Like it's not a bad feeling. It's artificial a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's not a bad feeling, right? It's not like you're going out and people are cheering for you, then it's like you get sick after, or it has some kind.
Mm-hmm.
There's no destructive side
Yep.
to that, technically, right? But I am a homebody in a lot of ways. So being on the road, you want to be home. Being at home, you sometimes want to be on the road. But I think as I get older, I think what the biggest issue, you didn't understand the cycles before. Like you're just living in
Mm,
it, but there's cycles to it, right?
sure.
Now I'm realizing the cycles. Now I have, more children. And quite frankly, I'm watching my accounting, personally doing it ourselves, and seeing where the financial reward comes from, where the time reward comes from. So
Mm.
meaning like, and I don't know if I'm just getting older, I have a mortgage, whatever, who knows? But like,
No, but it's a part of it. Yeah.
right. It's just then I'm seeing like the time spent with my children. So will I be going on the road in the same capacity that I did before? My booking agent would want to hear this. Maybe, maybe not. If the financial incentive does
Yeah.
not measure up to the time that I'm taking away from the people I care about, it doesn't make sense to me as much anymore, right?
Yeah.
Whereas before
It's
you'd hop a whole band, 5 people into a small van or a small car, paying it out of your pocket, not making a lot of money, performing to a small number of people because you're seeking after something in your career, right? You're trying to
sure.
gain something in the career. And I feel more comfortable and secure in where I'm at in my career that you have to weigh everything now, because the time with
Mm.
your children is more valuable than any time I could spend with 10,000 strangers, right?
That's beautiful too. And like the thing that I hear you saying as well is that you know your worth. You know the cost of your time.
Yeah, and then the first time every musician goes through this, and I'm sure you've gone through this in different ways as well. You have to decide, like you do all these free gigs and open mics, and you want to just get out there. And then you're like, I don't want to do free shows anymore. I think I should get paid.
Mm.
And the fear of doing that is real, because you're
Mm.
like, then nobody's going to see me anymore.
Yeah.
And then people are going to stop booking you. And then you go through this period of like the work slows down and then it picks back up. And not only does it pick up, you're getting paid for what you do. And then you
Mm.
start getting into better events and better shows. And then that turns into a touring career. And I think every artist, every creative, every entrepreneur
Mm.
has to decide when free labor is no longer beneficial. But free labor for a moment, it might be a necessity. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't have that worth yet.
typically is. And you're gaining something at that point when it's early. What you're gaining in experience, what you're gaining in know-how, it's all value. It's
Right.
valuable. It's
Yeah.
when you already know all those things, you get them, and now you're still doing it because you're afraid of taking the
Afraid.
next step. And now it starts to cost you. And there starts to be a deficit to that. You get cranky, you're angry, you're frustrated. You said yes, but you didn't really want to. Now you resent it. Like, it's all that stuff. So it's very real. And this is so why I wanted to have you on the show, because without us even knowing each other that well or anything, like, you're teaching and preaching conscious economics. And so we're just like meant to be doing this show and doing stuff together. I have a big feeling about that. But one of the things I've learned is sometimes you get a feeling or you get a little vision, your intuition tells you something. And sometimes that vision or intuition isn't for right now, but I'm like very much a doer where I'm like, oh, we got to do it now. Like, let's book a call. Where are we
Right,
going?
right, right,
Blah,
right.
blah. And I realize that sometimes I'm like chasing my own tail in that, and that there's always a higher plan and an order. And like, you can cultivate that energy or that feeling with someone, and then like something will circle back around or it'll fit when it does. You trust it that way. You had another baby. So how many beautiful children do you have now?
We're at number 5. Wonderful 5. Yeah,
5.
it's a tribe. It's a small soccer team, right?
It's a small soccer team for sure. And I know that your wife, who's so lovely and incredible, is also involved in your career and supports as well as your manager. So, my question for you is, how do you do that? Like, how are you managing all of that? And the real question is not how are you managing it, because like we all figure out a way, but how do you keep your creative fire alive while juggling the very real responsibilities and joys of raising children, having a family, having a mortgage, dealing with a business that, you're an entrepreneur and your product is you and your music. So how do you find the balance of keeping the creative spark and the creative fire alive with all of that?
I think if I go back through my catalog, probably half or more of the songs are about my wife, are inspired by my
Mm,
wife, right? So that's one side of it. And
mm,
then some of them are about my children, but it's also about, like, I don't just write random songs, like, meaning, like, I'm not writing songs for the club. I'm not writing just
mhm,
like storytelling songs necessarily. Everything comes from some form of relationship. I think I like to say, like,
mm,
I write relationship songs, not love songs, just like human connection,
yeah.
human relationship. And my children inspire me, like they do, and and part of it is, like, I've always said, like, I can't quit my dreams and then try to get them to fulfill their dreams or follow their dreams, right? I can't quit my purpose and then say, "Hey, don't quit." Right? It makes no sense. And then what the world is going to look like for them matters to me. Who they
Mm,
become matters
mm,
to me. So all that stuff influences creativity, right? Because they create possibility. Like, they are the incarnation of possibility, right? Like,
mm.
like, you know what I mean? Like,
I love that.
there's nothing more representative of possibility than children. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
just this thing that comes out of nowhere, and watching, like, the youngest one, Asaya, he's just under 3 months. I don't know when babies are supposed to start talking or doing the cooing sounds and whatnot, but my friend was on the phone and I
Yeah.
said, "Say hi." And he's like, "Hi, hi." And then
What?
I said it again, and I said it, say it again, because we're all like, "What the heck just happened?" I said, "Say hi," and then he said it again. And then I walked
Wow.
into the other room, and then the guy on the phone was like, "I definitely heard that, right?" And he did it twice. Walked into the other room, came back. I was off the phone now, and then he saw me again, made the same sound. Right now, I think babies just have, like, these, like, moments where, like, they just can do something, and then they'll never be able to do it again until they're get to a
Yeah.
certain. But he's very
Yeah.
talkative, and watching him just, like, process life and try to imitate life and try to, like, every time he sees me, he's just smiling and giggling. Like, that stuff is inspiring. You know what I mean? Like,
It is. Yeah.
my family would always be big, like, because I always like children, and even if I only had one biological child, I probably
Mm.
would end up adopting children. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
It's just in your spirit. It's in your heart.
yeah, like, all my life I've loved children. Even when I was a
I love
child, like, I
that.
always looked at the younger child and connected. Like, even if there was a stranger
Mm.
walking by with their baby, I'd always pretend like I had some kind of, like, inside secret with
Mm.
them and say hi or whatever. Right?
I love it. Well, they are so precious.
Oh yeah, it's unheard of. Like, it's just like it's just a life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So my theory on it is that like we've got it all wrong, and that we don't realize that babies are like little old wise like beings that come from the other side and remember it all. And then we go through this slow process of forgetting, depending
Right.
on, who our parents are and how we're nurtured. So a lot of us go through a process of forgetting, and then we go into like our middle life where we're just like lost. And then
Totally.
slowly, usually typically, we start going back to the remembering of, and then like on our deathbed, we're back to that little wise old thing, but we just look like we're a bigger version of it, and then we pass back over. So I really look at babies and I'm like, you are so wise. Like, teach me all that you know. Like,
Yeah.
let me just be around you so I can remember through you that this is a love story. This whole realm, this whole earth school, it's a love story. And that's what it is, because they come with just all the abundance of love. It's
Yeah.
like the only thing that's real in those stages.
And I always say to myself, like, don't get in the way of your children. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
one of my primary parenting philosophies is get your children to a point of autonomy and independence with as clean a slate as possible, right?
Mm.
So, I have a strong faith in Christ. That's my life. Talk about Christianity is so weird sometimes because like we've done a bad PR service for our, for the faith. But I always feel like anytime I mention it, I mention it with like some kind of caveat. But I think in my head like, oh, there's some Christian who's going to be criticizing me for saying things a certain way. But anyways, I ease them into like I don't try to just throw faith on them and say you gotta study this and you gotta learn this. I just think it's harmful. It doesn't work, and
No,
who knows what they'll be inspired to teach me. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like who knows what they'll see that I don't see. That's the nature of life. That's the nature of inspiration. That's the nature of intuition. Like I see things a certain way, and my daughter may just come out of nowhere and be like, well, it's actually like this. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
now I see it that way. Well, So yeah, just get out of the way of your children, and not to say you don't raise them or discipline them or make sure they're protected. It's just that the brain, the spirit, it has to become what it will become. You know what I mean? And
Mm,
you can't crush that. Like you
yeah.
can, and that's the fragility of what they are, right? But we
Yeah.
shouldn't crush that. We shouldn't try to crush that, right?
I love that philosophy, and I think that it's really missing for a lot of us. I think the idea is like we own these beings, or like they're ours to
Oh no,
cultivate however we want, and it's so not the case. Like they are their own unique individual, and you are a guide. You are a mere guide to
right,
help them as best you can be on their dharmic path and give them as much as you can in terms of the wisdom you've learned along
right,
your earth walk. And like, hey, like you can do that, but you're probably going to crack your head open on the side of the coffee table. Like,
right, right.
like it's these little things, but we learn so much from them when we like take that control away and actually allow them to become who they are
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and give them the safe container to do that and express that, like within bounds and safety,
Yeah, you want to
obviously.
make sure that they get there. Like you don't want them to jump in front of a train because like we want to get you right. But and then there's just like you see yourself in them. So there's all kinds like parenting is not easy, because
Oh,
you see
God,
yourself
yeah.
in your children. They know how to push buttons that nobody else knows how to push. So like we'll never be perfect, but that's why I say as clean a slate as possible.
Yeah.
Right? You're gonna make mistakes, and if you do make mistakes, I think one thing we don't do enough is just apologize or talk to the children about like,
Mm,
I had to do a lot of apologizing to my daughter and explaining to her because she's our first child, right?
mm-hmm.
And you don't realize that you're learning how to parent from your parents. And our parents weren't perfect. They come up in an age where I don't know what your background is, but I think that generation is very stubborn in a lot of ways.
Well, they didn't have the tools. Think about who they were raised by
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
what the conditions were. And so, in that generation, the story was suppress emotion,
Right,
endure, white knuckle it through, do whatever you can,
right.
and like don't break, essentially. And unfortunately, what it did is it did break a lot of them,
Did
but
right,
in a way that we could see the brokenness of it,
right.
and we could see that it didn't work, and we didn't want to be that or create that. But the scariest thing is when you start doing the thing that like you had to go to therapy for from
Right,
your parents doing, and you're like, I'm
right.
doing it now. Like that's generational patterning, and it is
It's
tough.
true,
And
yeah.
like some of it is genetically passed on, and then there's the nurture side of what we witness and how we're conditioned and programmed. And really, like, one of the things that I love, especially in this age of technology and everything, is I love to bring people back to, like, we are the greatest technology on the planet. The human technology is the most, and we haven't even scratched the surface of understanding, like, at all. So really, if you want to use like computer language, like, we got downloaded with a whole bunch of programs and software, and like some of that is not working. And some
Right.
of it we got to literally remove, and like it takes work.
There's viruses in there. There's
Yeah. And I respect what you say about like your first, like your daughter, because I even look to, like, I have two sons and they have a significant age gap. Like, they're 4.5 years, which is significant enough. And I'm like, I was such a different mother at the point that my second came versus my first, because my first taught me, I learned,
right.
I made the mistakes, I had to course correct. And like, I see the difference in the children. So there has been a lot of like genuine apologies I've had to give to Luke.
It's important. It's very important. I don't think I've ever really heard my dad ever apologize for anything,
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to say that generation, but there's a lot of people in that generation that don't feel like they need to apologize. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's probably
Yeah.
hard for them too, right? Like, apologizing is humbling, and some
It
people don't
is.
want to be humbled.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I think my daughter a lot of times just had to talk to her about things and just like talk her through how I
Mm.
was taught and how I was thinking, and just kind of
Mm-hmm.
and talking her through it. You're kind of unprogramming yourself. You're kind of like
You are
unwiring that thing, because once you call it out, now you're seeing it objectively, right? Goes
100%.
back to what we were saying about honesty, right?
And consciousness. Yeah.
Right, right, right.
It's just being conscious, being aware. This podcast is brought to you by Mindfulness and Money. Mindfulness and Money is our new annual membership program designed to meet you where you are at and thoughtfully help you heal your issues with money. Join Asil Albaba, our in-house financial therapist, and myself, Rhiannon Rosalind, as we help you uncover all the deep-seated blocks that are preventing you from living your most authentic, powerful expression with money and out in the world. So if you're interested in joining, you can go ahead to consciouseconomics.ca and click on Mindfulness and Money to find out how to sign up. There's also a free trial option for those of you that want to dip your toe in before making a commitment for the year. The program is designed to be a democratized access for financial coaching and financial therapy. We have some very accessible pricing for you with options within as well, so that you can make your own conscious decision what you are able to afford as you start this healing journey. We hope to see you there. So I want to ask you, we're on this really kind of interesting topic around programming and what we pick up from what we see in our upbringing. And here on this show, we do like to talk a little bit about money, because it's so interesting how much money like becomes the source or the root of so much programming and conditioning.
Yeah.
And I wonder, especially because I think it's really inspiring for people to hear you as a working touring musician and a dad, like you're a homeowner, all the things, because a lot of working musicians feel like they're never going to get that opportunity unless it's their, like Drake, or like
Yeah,
their,
yeah, yeah.
Shania Twain, and that's not true
Real,
either.
that's
And
real. Yeah, that's real.
so I wonder though, like, what's your own conscious kind of journey with money been, and specifically, as much as you're like feel comfortable to share?
So I remember, I don't know how old that was. I don't know how long you want the story to be, but I used to work for the Boys and Girls Club. I was not a supervisor, but a counselor. But and I worked for a
Yeah.
while. And I remember I didn't spend a lot of money, like at the time. Like, I was living with my parents, didn't really go out and buy stuff much, and I just take my checks and just put them in a drawer. I had an account, but I wasn't using the account. It was like joint with my mom, because it was like the same account when I was like a baby. They open up an account, they put some money every so often.
Sure.
And I think I was in high school, like this is like grade 11, 12-ish, right?
Okay.
Where I started working with the Boys and Girls Club. And I would just take my checks, put them in, and I didn't even tell my parents, like, they knew I was working, but I wasn't saying, hey, can we catch a check? Or could I have my own bank account, right? I
Right.
didn't care about all that stuff. And then when I fast forward to, my final year of, well, I was in university still working with the Boys and Girls Club. I dropped out of university, privileged enough to have my parents pay for the university. take care of that stuff. And then my mom's like, "You're gonna have to start. You're working now. You gotta pay for university."
Mm.
And then a flip switch in my brain because I didn't want to go to university even in high school. My mom's a teacher, dad used to teach in school, sister's a
Mm.
teacher. My brother's a lawyer, aunts and uncles are principals, teachers, a lot of stuff in my family. And I never wanted to go to university, but I had decent grades, right? I was student council president and honor roll, but I just didn't want to go to university, right? And when my parents said I had to pay for school, I just waited out. Just like, I don't want to do this. I'm not putting the money I work for into school. So I
Mm.
secretly dropped out. They didn't know, right?
Oh my goodness.
It would have been such a cataclysmic moment in my house that I pretended to still go to school
Oh
for
man.
a whole semester,
Oh,
right?
that's a long one. That's
Yeah, yeah.
hard.
I'd get a ride from my friends every morning, go to school, and then York University began some of my spiritual journeys and like tapping into like different parts of myself because of some of the people I met there, right?
Mm.
On the financial side of it, though, I remember when I told my mom I dropped out of school was around the same time I dropped the bomb that I'm moving out,
Oh wow.
and my mother laughed. She said, "How you gonna do that? With what money, right?" And I had all these
Yeah.
checks,
Oh wow.
and I said,
Like
"Can you cash
still,
these?"
you still hadn't cashed any of
I
them?
just had all these checks, never cashed anything, right?
What?
Right. I don't know how much money it was because Boys and Girls Club, right? But it was
Sure,
over
yeah.
time. It was over time. So
Oh, of course.
I did the math that I just had enough rent for a certain period of time,
Period of
right?
time, yeah.
And I think rent was like basement apartment, like $600 a month. I just gave her the checks. I had it in my hand. I never forget it. She was on her bed and I sat on the bed beside her and then I just put the checks down. Can you cash these for me? Right? And it's just a stupid. Can you cash these for me so I can pay the
Oh
rent of the new
my
place I'm going to
goodness.
live at? And I was secretly looking for places to live, old fashioned a little bit in the, Brampton, Guardian,
Yeah.
classifieds and stuff. I don't even think Craigslist was a thing. So I tell that story to say the first time I went into the bank myself to open a bank account. And it was a friend of mine who worked at the bank. We went to high school together, my brother's age. And I said to him, "Hey, I want the most limited bank access I can get. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't." And he wanted me to do banks go in and they want to hook you up with everything. And I said, "Look, I just want it," because I was very against technology at the time, very like off the gridish kind of mentality, anti-establishment, anti-system, anti-everything. But I have to pay bills now, right? So I said, how can I have access to my money and put my money in the bank without having to giving up too much information or doing all the bank stuff? And he walked me through it. And he's like, "Look, it doesn't make sense. You at least need an access card." I was like, "I don't even want an access card. I just want
Yeah.
to give you my money and then come get it when I want it."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a
I
very
hear
stupid
you.
mentality, kind of. But I was already like going down this very spiritual path where it's just like, I don't want anything in the world, but I have to pay bills. How can I do this without having
Mm.
any connection to at the time, I guess we say the Matrix, right?
Sure, yeah.
He still supports my music to this day, that guy, because
That's
I think at the
awesome.
time he just saw me as the little brother of his friend, and he's just like, "What are you talking about, man?" Like but he heard me out because I'm a very rational thinking
Yeah.
person, and I got my apartment, got my account, and then I first trip on that journey was going to Trinidad. That's the first place I did like backing it. So when it comes to the money, I was against money. I was against like the economy. I anti-capitalist through and through. I remember I was at a Jack Johnson concert with a friend of mine he was a guitar player who helped me become a singer. And I told him capitalism is the devil, or something like
Mm.
that, right? And I
Mm.
explained to
Mm.
him why I thought capitalism was the devil, right?
Mm.
I don't not believe that anymore, but I don't fully believe that anymore, right? I'm
Mm.
not an anti-capitalist anymore,
Mm.
but we could talk about that after, right? Having a mortgage, a house, getting royalties, having an account, like we do our own accounting, but we brought on an accountant. Like this is a different world now, right? Like from where I was when I was doing backpacking, I pretty much say I died to the world, like meaning I had no possessions except for what I had in my backpack, literally.
Wow. Yeah.
There's a period of time where I was paying rent at this place. I was living in it was a house, but there was multiple rooms everybody was living in,
Yeah.
and I was sleeping on a yoga mat.
Yeah.
And this is by choice, and I pretty much had nothing. So
Yeah.
one extreme was that. Now where I look at it is I still don't care for money. I still don't like the premise of money. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like I get it in the context of the world we live in. And I
Mm.
understand it in the context of the world we live in. But in an ideal world, we shouldn't like if the perfect world doesn't have money, right? Like that's
Mm.
my
Mm.
idea. But I see it as a value system,
Mhm.
right? And the way my mind changed was, okay, you guys respect money. You look at money as a system of value, and you almost respect things with money, or you respect money in a certain way, or you put value to things based off of how
Mm-hmm.
much money's behind it. And we don't even realize we do it sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
It's
you put Chris
unconscious.
Stapleton in a, I want to say Chris, there's actually a video of a classical violinist, right? In a subway station. Like he's one of the biggest in the world in a subway station playing, and everybody's just ignoring him,
Yeah.
right? Every
Yeah.
so often someone will come by, but that guy will go in somewhere in Europe and just sell out theaters, right?
Oh,
Because he's
yeah.
one of the greatest in the world. So the perception of the value of something matters for people, right?
Mm-mm.
So I kind of, outside of just the necessities of life and taking care of my family and adding value to my career and to my music, I look at money and wealth, or however you want to look at it, as tapping into the perception of value for other people.
Mm.
Does that make sense? Maybe I could say it in
It
a different
does.
way.
No, I'm following you and I'm listening with a curious mind and heart in what you're saying. Yeah.
So now I'm more like, okay, I like things that are valuable, not because I like money, but I
Yeah.
like so if someone made the best guitar, maybe I'm not going
Yeah.
to buy that guitar, but I respect that. And if that's accessible to me, then I will put the money behind that. But in the same token, I don't own a TV, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't spend a lot of I don't go to out to party. I don't really go out in restaurants and dine. Me and my wife have not been on a vacation in God knows how long,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I have this like weird kind of thing where it's on one end, I live very almost monastic in some elements of my life where I don't want any possessions in some regards. So, we declutter a lot. We take things out like, do we need this? Do we need this? But then the things I do buy, now I'm more about buying the high value of those things,
Sure. Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
one, they work better most times on all times. Two, they last. People respect them more,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's a conversation I continue to have with myself. And I have a good friend of mine, he's like, man, I want you to be recognized as an artist. I want more
Mm-hmm.
people to know you. And he thinks like there's certain things I got to change in
Mm-hmm.
order to, like, when you walk in a room, I want you to command attention. I'm like, I don't want to command attention. I just want to be myself. He's like, but I really believe that your career can be bigger if you do these little things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it boils down to a lot of things, like the way I used to dress, right? At no point in any stage of my life did I feel like I was upset at how I was dressing in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still not upset, and this what I wear now may change. Like I coach my children's soccer, so now I'm wearing
Sure.
more sporty things.
Sure.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
But so for me, it's a conversation that I understand that I can have with myself because I live in the privileged Western world,
Mm-hmm.
right? I believe I'm the type of person that if I gain money, I'm going to put that money to positive use, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think, and this could be my own arrogance speaking or my own conceit, that my music has benefit to the world, right? I
Mm-hmm.
believe that that's my purpose. That's part of my contribution to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So the more money I can bring in to put into my music and my career, then
Yeah.
I do think it will have more benefits worldwide. Like that, that could be my arrogance speaking.
Well, no, it's not because you are bringing a vibrational, energetic gift to people. And it's the unique gift that you're channeling of the divine. Like, I believe art and all of it, all of our expression is coming from something beyond,
Yeah,
like how a song is birthed. If you think about it, of course, like there's an emotion and there's something brewing, but probably as an artist and a writer, that like if you said like on Tuesday I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write a song, like it doesn't really work that way. There's a wave that happens and then the wave starts to peak, and at that moment, if you have your practice and you understand, you're getting your thing and something's channeling through you. And sometimes later, when you listen back to it, you're like, whoa, that has so many other layers, or like,
yeah,
it's really, really interesting. So, what I'm unpacking with everything you said with money is like, I hear some things that were common things that I felt myself at certain
kind of,
points. And
yeah,
I've been really conscious around trying to shift and evolve my perception around money because I made money the bad guy in my mind. but money is neutral. Like money is a neutral energetic exchange. And I think that's where you're headed. Like it sounds like a very spiritual process you've gone through with this neutral value exchange. And I love that you explain it that way, because that's exactly what I say. Like an economy is our collective value system. It's an expression of our collective value system. So right now, what we currently see in the world, which is like pretty sad and devastating to see that money is more important than the well-being of laborers, that money is more
Right.
important than the well-being of the planet. Like
Right.
that means that somewhere we, not the money, we have corrupted the value system through unconsciousness, through greed, through all the things we started this conversation with. Was like, we're not looking in the mirror. We're not facing ourselves. We're not facing our truth.
Yeah, I think it's a good way. It's neutral. It's a neutral energy. I had this whole thing called current sea. It's a sea of current, right? And it's
Yes.
just a
Yeah.
flow of current. So I definitely agree with that. The concern with it is that where it comes from, we as people don't have any control of where the money comes from, how it's printed. And I don't want to, that's a whole world of like,
But people are doing that. Like it's a man-made system.
right.
And one of the things that like really gets me, I'm like, we're the only species that has to like pay to live on this planet. But we created that system. Like the mind and the ego created that system. And now we're bound by the mind and the ego, and we're bound by the unconsciousness.
So why I always said that capitalism is the devil before when I said that. And it's not to suggest that any other system that is juxtaposed to capitalism is the better system or anything. I don't want to get into all that
Sure.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I will say, as a Christian, the other form of capitalism that I can think of
Mhm.
is in the Garden of Eden. This is just, a metaphor or a mythology, however you want to look at it. So I'm not saying this is fact or, this is just my opinion, right? And it's when the serpent bartered with Adam and Eve, right? And they exchanged information, they exchanged something. There's a whole deeper understanding of that story in terms of what the serpent was trying to get Adam and Eve to think, or Eve in that
Mhm.
case in the story, right?
Mhm.
That she didn't have something that she already had.
Mhm.
And he sold her on a lie, right?
Yeah.
To exploit her vulnerability. And I think when capitalism is, and it has been, about exploiting vulnerability. And one of the most extreme cases of that is the slave trade,
Mhm.
right? It's hard for my people, at least, to look at
Mhm.
that system in any other way but evil, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I get it now. So the other side of capitalism that most people don't want to talk about is, how do you upheave the benefactors of a system where all their wealth and continued wealth derived from exploited labor, and not
Yeah.
exploited in a good way, exploited in the most inhumane way, right?
Rooted in slavery, racism, colonization. Yeah.
You have companies that still exist
Oh
that may
yeah.
have changed their name or may have changed their ownership, that their
Yeah.
profits stem from that system.
Well, and that system still exists, and
Right.
it takes new
100%.
forms in
Right.
terms of jail and prison systems,
Yep.
military
Yep. Yep.
industrial complex, like all of it. So I'm with you on all of those things. And then I also, because I was fascinated by this in, growing up, and I say this now, it's a big reframe, but I say, like, I grew up with the privilege of being a low income person in a low income household. And it was a privilege because I got to understand and view and see the world in a different way. I got to have a global education because of living in community housing where people from all around the world lived in my apartment buildings. And instead of traveling, because I didn't have the means and my family didn't, I traveled in my own backyard through different foods and cultures and languages. And like, I gained so much from that experience. What I
Right.
also gained is a street smart and like an ability and a hunger and a drive to
Right.
figure it out for myself. But at the same time, because of some of the unconscious conditioning I had around wealthy people or
Yeah, yeah,
rich
yeah.
people or the ones on the top or like people that don't get it or don't see us or like poor people are good, hardworking people. Like I had all of these
Yeah,
things
yeah. And
programmed.
it's not always true, right? Yeah.
And it's not always true. And it's not always true on either side. And, you know, life and the universe put me in this like very wild position where I was now running a very elite organization with the wealthiest people in the world. And like, and again, like some of the stereotypes are true and then sometimes they're not. But like I think what I'm getting at or what I'm trying to say is that because of my desire to learn and my thirst and my hunger to always ask the deeper existential questions, I found myself rooting deeper and deeper into trying to understand what is this system, what is its roots, which is
Right.
exactly what you said. It's colonization, it's slavery, it's ego, it's unconscious, power hungry, manipulative ego. So, what's the solution though? Because there's always going to be value exchange, there's always going to be energetic exchange. And so I started to go down into the depths of like, what is actually capitalism? Because it's become something, but what is it? What's its origin? What was the philosophy? And the philosophy of capitalism by Adam Smith was not what this is right now. So we call this system capitalism, but this is not. This is a version of a hijacked capitalism. And the reality is, like, even in the fact that corporations can lobby governments and pay to get them elected to have what they want, it's not a free market.
Right. I agree. I agree. And I'm glad you brought up corporations because
It's a corporatocracy. That's what it is.
yes, so that's good to put out there because I did political science and I did philosophy. So Adam
Mm.
Smith and all this, I was all up in that in my first year of university,
Yeah.
right? And I've written some books that will probably never see the light of day, right? And
You've written the books?
written book. I don't. They're not public. I'll just hand them down
What?
to my.
I want to read all the
No, no,
books you've written.
no, 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 no.
I.
We don't. We don't. They will not see the light of day. But I'll
Oh,
say
they'll be
this.
seeing my eyes. I'll be
Maybe,
getting over there.
but it talks about. So I go into depth about corporations,
Mm,
you know, and one of the first corporations was the Dutch East India Company. I think that's
mm,
how the Dutch East Indian Company. I think it was called.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And you know, but I connect all these things to my faith, right, and how it
mm,
plays into faith and Christianity. And corporations are one of the biggest maligns to the planet, right?
mm-hmm.
Because corporations are the drivers of slavery as well, right? If you want, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
corporation, like royal families
And
are
government
corporations.
and religion, though. It's
Yes.
all interconnected.
Well,
It's
the
all
Vatican is a
interconnected.
corporation. Like that's like
It is
the Catholic Church is a
100%.
corporation. Yeah, so it's all connected. So I don't want to. Yeah, and, you know,
It's
and
all
politics
connected.
governments
Yeah.
are the royal families are the first governments and those. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
all royal families connected with religions. Religions created
Yeah.
corporations, and so I agree with all of it. So I don't want to take out
Yeah.
religion from that. So I think that I like that you bring capital back to it because even though I say capitalism is the devil, I will also say that you know in the Bible there's a scripture with the lady with the ladies with the oil
Mm,
lamps, right?
mm-hmm,
And they all have oil lamps, and then they get to a point where like the couple of them run out of oil, and they
mm,
ask the other. There's two of them that run out of oil, and then there's two more that have oil, and the two that run out say, "Can you give us some of your oil so that
mm-hmm,
we have oil?" Like, no, you go back, get oil because if
mm,
we give you some of ours, then we'll all run out, and then we'll all be in a
mm.
messed up situation. So I always look at that as it's not capitalism, but it's a form of free market in a way. It's a form of like well what you put into life a bit you're going to get out of life, right?
But
So that
if that is true, then if you, what you're putting into life is greed and I'm better than you and all of these things, you will get it back. And that is what we're in right now. We're in an unconscious, egoically constructed value system that has not done its work to look at the shadow, to look at what is actually there, to work on becoming enlightened and on the pathway to enlightenment.
so this is where my life gets kind of like I'm cynical though. Like I'm cynical, very cynical
You have
sometimes.
every right to be. Look at
And
what the world is that we're in.
I feel like and I don't talk about this often, but I'll say that when pedestrian population that existed during the rise of slavery and the process of slavery allowed
Mm,
that to happen, right? And I'm
mm,
not saying everybody allowed out. I'm sure there were people. There was a lot of resistance. but there were comforts that people all got from it, I'm sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same way we get comforts from child labor, same way some
Sure.
people get comforts from like sex trafficking. Like I don't think people realize how much,
How pervasive it is.
right, you know what I mean? When that was allowed to happen, I think we created an almost no return situation. Like it's almost like there was too much wealth amassed, too much capital amassed by too few people that it's almost impossible to undo this because the majority of wealth is in the hand of a small group of people, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
talking about Jeff Bezos. When I think of wealth, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about ownership of things, influence over things, right?
Sure. I hear you, and I'm also mindful of the time. And so I want to respond to what you're saying,
Yeah,
and then I
I
want
want
to
to hear it.
circle
Yeah.
it and package it up. But what you're saying, and I'm like with you on all of it, but the part that I want to ask is, okay, let's take away all of this for a second. Do you believe in the power of the people? Just yes or no. Do you believe in the power of the people?
So a friend of mine once said a long time ago, there are three types of people in the world: followers, leaders, and loners. Right? And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if that's true, but I just thought it was cool how he said it, right? And he said, loners can become leaders just by the virtue of not following every. And I think I believe in the power of the individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because what the world keeps showing me is that when it's tough, man, because like yeah, I believe. So yes, I believe in the power of the people,
Mm.
right? But I believe that mobs can be led easier than individuals can be led.
Well, it's this like majority rule, mob rule idea. But I ask you that question, do you believe in the power of people? And obviously, when we say people, when we talk about the collective is just a series of
Yeah,
individuals. And if those individuals take one responsibility for their own self,
right,
meaning right action onto self,
right.
clear your shit from yourself. Where are you running these programs of slavery, of colonization, of ego, of power, of whatever? Clean it up within you
Yeah,
through your own consciousness. When we do that, we like vibrates like, magnetizes like. You'll be
right.
magnetized to other people who are on that path. Slowly people start to see what are they doing over there because they're doing something different. They
Yep, yep.
see differently. They're opting out. And so when we see these people who have all of this power, they're the most threatened people on the planet, actually, because
Mm,
they have amassed so much. But all it
yeah,
takes is for people to wake up and realize and say, I don't want to work for you anymore.
yeah.
I
That's
don't
why.
want
That's
to
it.
buy your products. I opt out. And that creates a swell. And that is part of my philosophy, what I believe my purpose is here. I've been receiving a gift to preach and speak about a new economy, about a new structure, a new value system that will come through consciousness, through evolving our consciousness.
That will take an individual who has amassed that kind of wealth to shine that light on all of us. It's going to take someone who can influence the wealthy.
No, we shine the light on the individual. There's so many more lights for us to shine than for that individual to shine.
I agree with that. Yes, absolutely. I definitely agree
And
with
the
that.
one other question I want to ask you, my last question, because I'm just going to let you now sit in the pondering of all of this. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
My last question is, and truly an answer, like in your true,
Oh,
full
yes.
truth, as clearly as you can, do you believe that people can change?
Yes. Yes. Do I believe? See, the thing is,
No thing is, just do you believe people can change or can they not? What is
absolutely,
your
I absolutely believe people can change. I think that how do you get rid of corporations? You can't. Not at this
well,
stage.
the easiest way to reorganize systems of power and structure is for the very things that keep them afloat to stop. You know, tabloid magazines are thriving and that culture of paparazzi and whatever because people buy the magazines at the grocery store lineup and continue to fund it through conscious consumerism of deciding where you put. And you spoke about this very elegantly when you spoke about where you've come to money now and that you see that value of true craftsmanship or the energy and the power that something was created by that may actually make it a higher ticketed item because
Right,
there's
right.
like care and thought and all of the things that matters. And so again, we say like you can go to Walmart and you can go to whatever because it is easier, because we are struggling, because we
Yeah,
need,
yeah,
a break. But the reality is you could also go to the small business owner and you could get that product and you would pay more. But if
yeah.
all of us started to wake up out of the illusion of what this is, that we're programmed and we're designed to be overworked, overstressed, overwhelmed, and over consuming to the point that we just continue in this cycle and we keep upholding it. It's exactly what they want. It's part of the design.
So I don't go to protests. I used to when I was younger. Well, I don't go to protests now. But I would never tell someone your protest is a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think like if you're out there and you're saying free Palestine or whatever, and you feel like that is the cause to fight, I think there's value in that. You know what I mean? I had a
Mm-hmm.
friend of mine, Palestinian, who wanted me to do a
Mm-hmm.
hunger strike with them, and I explained to her why I couldn't do it and why the way I will participate is,
I
it's
mean,
another
your past
conversation.
self loves a hunger strike, so that was a
Yeah,
big decision to say no.
I used to hunger strike a lot. I think to me, the individual, like I think the world is heading down a path that is designed, and it would take a cataclysmic thing, whether by nature,
Isn't that already happening?
it's happening. It could take, the way, an example is the music industry. The guys who started Napster,
Mm-hmm.
what they did, they could have and should have destabilized the whole music industry,
Mm-hmm.
because music is a very privileged industry, meaning
Mm-hmm.
for thousands of years, music did not have that level of value. Now we have millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires who are musicians, who started as musicians,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that has happened in the last 100 years, less
Mm-hmm.
than that even, right? And they came with a little program, a little software, a little coding, and just almost destabilized that whole thing. There were a lot of powers at play that was like, that can't happen. Spotify came in and said they had something. How do we make this accessible and relevant to the consumers? And then they did. Daniel Ek said, let's figure this out. They figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Spotify. The corporate bodies were like, we can't let this happen. Sued
Mm-hmm.
Spotify, held back music, did everything to make sure that wouldn't happen. That was
Mm-hmm.
the better thing for the people, but it wasn't the better thing for the corporate bodies. We still have gas powered vehicles, which I'm not against them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we all know there's a better way to power vehicles that would be better for the planet, better for our health, better for everything, right? But
Sure.
those powers are like, no, we're not letting this go, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to let Eon run that far ahead of us. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to make sure we control it enough that we can catch up, and then once we finally catch up, then we'll make a shift, right? So,
Yeah.
and I will say, this is my perspective, all of that comes from how much wealth and power was amassed through the transatlantic slave trade. So
Mm-hmm.
that undoing has to be as impactful as the
Mm-hmm.
transatlantic slave trade was. Like, so I don't know if we're ready for, like, it's possibly so big that we
Mm.
can't even have a conversation like this through the internet. Like, the transfer of power would be so
Yeah.
big
Yeah. I hear
that it would
you. I
shock
hear
all of
you.
us to our core.
Yeah.
So
I think
I'm
that's
sorry, go
coming.
ahead.
I
Okay,
think
so
that's coming. I
it's
think
scary as
that's
hell
coming.
though.
I think, well, fuck, yeah. But, at the same time, it's exhilarating because don't we want it to fall? Don't we want it to change? Don't we want it to shift? Like the privilege of being alive at this time where I believe we are entering a period of revealing, of
So
revelation,
my
of
question is,
seeing truth.
what are you willing to endure for that to happen?
I'm here for the full ride. Like I'm here for the full ride.
What if it's like, and this now we're getting into like, so like apocalyptic talk, but no, like, meaning, what does that mean? Like, give me an example of like, how many nights would you go without electricity? How many, like,
Well,
and I know
what's my
some,
alternative? If they've cut it off from me and I
right,
have nothing else, what's my alternative? But for me, I keep it to I am a sovereign being.
right,
In the end of the day, I have my connection to creator. I have my connection. I have my truth. Nobody can take that away from me. They can lock me up. They can take everything I own. They can do whatever
Right.
they want, but they cannot take my spirit. My
Right.
spirit exists. And even if they take my life, my spirit remains. They can't. It's an illusion
Right.
that they can take that. So
Right.
from
Right.
that, I stand in my ground and I witness the fall, and I witness all the systems that have been built on corruption, unsustainability, ego, power. I witness them crumbling, and I watch it crumbling through the mental health of our labor force. I
Right.
watch it
Right. Right.
crumbling through the jail system and how corrupt. I watch it through things like George Floyd. I watch it through the war in the Middle East. Like, I watch it reveal itself over and over again, how not in alignment this is, and how there's no way anymore with the level of consciousness that is on the planet that we can pretend that that is the way you solve a problem. And
Right.
there's no way that those things continue at the scale and mass that they are if they weren't being profited by the
Yeah.
powers that be, and that's the system. So
So
I stand and I watch it deteriorate, and
it
I hold the vision of the truth that there will be a golden age on this planet, and
right.
it may come in 7 generations from now, but we're the bridgers, and we're going to have to stand in the
Right
middle
to
of the
breathe.
storm in the fall and figure it out and hold our ground to build something better.
I agree. I agree 100%.
So I need you on that train with me. Bye.
Why I write the songs I write, like a lot of people don't know, I have a song called "We All Know."
Mm.
It's on my second EP, and it's just calling out the system. And I have older songs that, like, I used to write hip hop, I used to rap and stuff. I'm just realizing that life will continue as it is. Not I mean, when I say as it is, I don't mean like this way. Like, things can change greatly, right? I just think we have to, and we're kind of saying the same thing. Another song I wrote on that same EP is called Indie Soul. It's called Soul Checked, right?
Mm. Mm.
And is your mind checked? Is your heart checked? Is your soul checked?
I
Then you
love
could be
that.
no one else. That's the lyric, right?
I love that.
And my purpose, part of my purpose in this life, is to help people get their soul checked, right? It's to help people find themselves. I think, I think that there's two paths always in life, but we're on the path where they win. And what would have to happen, and I do think that, my people, again, I don't want to sound individualist or ego or centric, we have a big hand in that because we have innately learned how to crack the code of that level of oppression, right?
Mm.
Through forgiveness, through empathy, through
Mm.
patience, through physical, actual endurance, right?
Mm. Mm.
And we're in a time where with all this stuff, like, they talk about DEI, and they talk about what's all that stuff in America in the schools. They're really against
Oh,
my
I
brain
mean,
can't.
it's going again with all the slogans and the jargon, but the
Right.
essence of it is a bit
There's
hollow.
there's a very strong push to silence Black voices, and I think the exact opposite needs to happen. We don't
Mm.
have everything right. We do have
Mm-hmm.
some post-traumatic victim complex
Mm.
because we've been traumatized. Like, let's just
Of
face
course.
that, right?
Yeah.
It's not our parents did it. It's in our DNA,
Yeah, it's in
right?
the DNA. Yeah.
Right? It's
You
there.
hold the
It's
DNA of the ancestors. So
right.
their pain is in you
It's
to heal because they didn't have the condition to do it. So that is what we're here to do, and being the
right.
next highly evolved evolution of what that is. And
Right. Right.
I love everything you're saying. I am going to wrap our conversation only
Yeah. Yeah.
because
So we're
I,
getting there.
well, I could talk to you for 4 hours, and I wish I had more time because all I want to do is talk to you, actually. So
Go
one
ahead.
of the things, though, just to end this off and like wrap this really beautifully, is I hear you. I hear everything that you're saying and how I interpret what you are saying, because I am very much trying to walk in the vibration of universal consciousness, of unity consciousness. I think it's really incredibly important. And through the time that I have spent sitting with Indigenous elders, and this is Indigenous elders, like a lot of the times people think Indigenous elders, like African Indigenous elders, Native Indigenous elders, like Indigenous elders from around the world, I've had the privilege of learning the teachings of the medicine wheel. And the medicine wheel is the circle, and it has the 4 colors all around. And the teaching of the medicine wheel is that there become a time on the planet where it's so critical and so crucial, and we've lost our way so badly that it will take all the races on the planet that each hold a unique part of the lineage that created the problem in the first place. So the Black African lineage that endured the slavery, endured the pain. It's like the yellow man, the red man, the white man. And each will have to, through the own evolution of consciousness and healing, realize that the only way that the circle is complete is if we each take the piece of the literal DNA, the ancestral, and piece it together. Because in the end, all the us and them, and even the us and them of them up there that are running it, that are the problem, are still us. Like, it's still us. It's still a manifestation of this mind that we all hold. And the tricky, interesting thing is, like, we get lost, and this is what happens in the protesting, which is interesting, is we get lost back again. We answer war with warring. We answer war with war. That's not the answer. And, Einstein said that you can never solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. It's not possible. We don't see the opportunity because we're marred in this space. It's really like there's so many beautiful things that are happening in this world right now, although it does not feel that way. And one of those beautiful things is you. And to wrap it up, because I am such a fan of not just your music, I am a fan of you. I am a fan of your spirit. I'm a fan of your purpose. I'm a fan of your mission. And I don't mean that in the fan of like fanatical, like I mean that in like I see you, I hear you, I feel what you're doing on the planet, and I love it and I vibrate with it. And so with that said, it's been my honor to have you on this show. You are a new economy conscious leader through and through. It's so incredible to hear everything that you've shared today. I want to talk to you 10,000 more times, and I want to read all of your books that you've written, and I will finagle my way over there.
I will say this one last thing, because I was in my brain and I never got it out. I feel like, as we go forward, like with the idea of a new system, a new way of operating, is benevolence, charity, goodwill. Those things all matter. And I think, I would love those things to overtake capitalism, or capitalism as we know it, right?
Maybe it's a conscious economy that you're asking for.
Okay.
Maybe it's just a conscious economy that you're asking for. Maybe that's what it is. And now you got a new word for it.
Yes.
Because you're preaching conscious economics to me. That's what I'm saying. Where can we find you? Where is the best place for people who want to check you out? Where do you recommend they go? What do you want them to listen to first, second, third, and fourth?
I would always say, the music is first. So go to my website, ahimusic.com is where you'll find all my social platforms. I'm most active on Instagram. YouTube has a lot of stuff. But yeah, ahimusic.com, and listen to my stuff. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Tidal, Pandora, wherever. That's where you can find me. The music is important.
I love it so much. Thank you so much,
Thank you. Yes,
it was such a pleasure to have you.
All right.
What an episode. I hope you loved that. I felt like that conversation allowed me to more deeply express some of the philosophies of conscious economics and what it really means to think about a conscious economy. It's such a pleasure when you get to sit down with someone who just is so intellectually stimulating. And for me, that is exactly what I represent. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned so much from his honesty, his integrity, his truth. And for those of you that haven't already, you can check him out on all social platforms, but he's quite active on Instagram and YouTube, and obviously check out all of the incredible music. And that is it. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week and month, and we'll see you again on the next episode. Bye for now.